All right, y'all. So there has been something that I have been noticing over the last weeks and months prior to and post the NFL draft. And I wanted to get your guys' thoughts on this because I'm asking the question, am I just crazy or did anybody else notice this? So we're going to talk about it in today's video. So let's get to it. All right, we are back. What is going on, Colts Nation? Welcome back to another episode of Bring the Juice. Your guy, Cody, here. As we talked about at the beginning of this video, guys, we are going to be diving into this thing that I've been asking the question, did anybody else notice this? But before we get into what this topic is, just want to let you know this episode is presented by PrizePicks. Be sure to visit prizepicks.com today. Use their code BTJ when you sign up, or you can go prizepicks.com. However you want to do it, use the code BTJ when you sign up for a $100 deposit match. All right, I've kept you all waiting long enough. We are going to dive into this. So I made a post earlier today on Twitter asking the question. I don't know if anybody else has noticed this or not, but Chris Ballard has been asked multiple times by media about his DB room, right? Specifically the cornerback room and the safety rooms for the Colts this year. Now, Chris Ballard has been very, very supportive of his young DB room, specifically the corner room, right? He's talked a lot about, different guys like Juju Brents, Jalen Jones, Dallas Flowers. Obviously, he's thrown the name Kenny Moore as well, the veteran in the room the Colts re-signed. Right, and he has some pretty high praise for those young corners for the Colts, and obviously we know the Colts have spent a pretty decent amount of capital with a couple of these guys, especially Brent's, for being their projected number one outside corner, right? And he likes a lot of these young guys who had opportunities, some cut short by injury, some guys kind of got thrown into the fire like Jalen Jones a year ago, right? But he sees enough positives where the Colts felt confident enough that they didn't really need to address it in a big way in the first 2 days of the NFL draft. Now, obviously, there's going to be some competition because in day 3, the Colts drafted 2 guys that could play corner. But again, no major investment into that group, right? So Chris Ballard, very high on that. Very high, obviously, on Julian Blackmon, who the Colts re-signed on a 1-year deal. Blackmon's still 25 years old, but coming off his best year as a safety so far, making the transition from free to strong safety last offseason, has a career year, led the Colts in interceptions, obviously has dealt with some injuries throughout his career, but Ballard and the Colts still view Blackmon, from what all indications are, they still view Blackmon as a very important piece to their defense. But where I kind of have a hang-up, and this is what for me is just intriguing about what Ballard has said and Ballard hasn't said when it comes to this DB room. The only guy outside of Julian Blackmon in that safety room that he has mentioned has been rookie 5th-round pick last year, Daniel Scott. Again, Daniel Scott, a player who didn't see a single snap last year due to an injury earlier on in the offseason. That's it. No mention of the other 2 guys who presumably right now are going to be in competition for that starting free safety role. No mention of Rodney Thomas. No mention of Nick Cross. Ballard is a guy that doesn't strike me as somebody who minces words, right? He's not a guy that's going to just say things to say them or leave guys out, leave names out intentionally. Like, he's not a guy. He's a very well thought out guy when he's speaking to the media and speaking to other things, right? So I don't think this is something where that's an accident, because this hasn't just been like it's just a one-time deal, right? He just forgot to mention these guys' names, right, in this one specific thing. It has been multiple times now. When asked about the young DB room, he defaults to the corners. He talks about Julian Blackmon. He talks about Daniel Scott. No mention of these other 2 safeties. I just find that extremely interesting. I'm like, why has now been multiple times when he's been asked, he hasn't really mentioned these 2 players at all? Why is that the case, right? Now, Ballard did make some comments post-draft that the Colts still have their eyes out on a couple of veteran guys still out there, presumably in the DB room. So I think with some of those comments that Chris Ballard has made, also the fact that multiple times he has not referenced either of those guys, who you'd presume right now would be your guy you'd pencil in as a starter, one of those two guys. I find it very interesting that all those things kind of coincide, and there are still a lot of good names out there for the Colts if they so choose to go down the free agency path when it comes to the safety room. I mean, there's multiple guys. The obvious two we got to talk about, which the Colts have reportedly had interest on earlier on in the offseason, Quandre Diggs and Justin Simmons. Both those guys would be immediate plug-and-play starters. They are a little bit older. They are on the wrong side of 30. So, I mean, they're not going to be your long-term solution. But there's a couple guys that I still think if you sign them to a 1 or 2 year deal could provide kind of that stopgap solution for you. But even if you potentially think one of these young safety that's still on your roster could develop into that guy, they just need some more time, and they don't need that pressure of being the guy at the number one free safety spot, right? It's been well documented at this point, the struggles of that position a year ago. I mean, Rodney Thomas was your starter week 1. He got benched halfway through the season. Nick Cross got an opportunity. I think he definitely showed a lot more flashes, but still there was a lot of inconsistencies, right? And that's something that the Colts have even said they're looking for. Gus Bradley, some of those guys talking about that free safety position. Consistency is the word that they're looking for when it comes to that free safety position. And either of these two players that I mentioned, or even another veteran, would provide a lot more of that consistency on a play-to-play basis, right? Because I think if you really look at this Colts roster right now, the biggest question mark, I think, honestly, a lot of people might say corner. I would say free safety is the biggest question mark remaining on this current Indianapolis Colts roster.
As we said, guys, today's episode is sponsored by PrizePicks. Now, what is PrizePicks? PrizePicks is the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America. Instead of battling against thousands of other players across platforms, you're basically picking 2 to 6 player stat projections, and you're choosing more or less on those stat projections to be able to watch those winnings roll in. It's very easy. Do you guys want to play along at some of PrizePicks' favorite players like rapper Meek Mill and UFC fighter Sugar Sean O'Malley? Well, if you guys sign up today, you can find the community plays under the promos tab of the app to view the entries of some of the biggest names on the platform and be a part of that as well. You can now win up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks with as little as 4 correct picks. You can turn $10 into $1,000 just like that with NBA, NHL, and college basketball entries today on PrizePicks, America's #1 fantasy sports app. Like a lot of other things, guys, they also offer injury insurance, so your entries stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. So if someone exits the game in the first half and does not return in the second, that player projection won't count against you and the rest of your entry stays live. So it's great bounce back for that one. What I love about the app as well, guys, is it's not just sports like NBA, NHL, football, and tennis, and baseball, and all these other things, but there's also a lot of others that go into it as well. If you like to place entries on video game situations like Call of Duty, CS2, Apex, if that's something that appeals to you, there's a wide variety of sports and video games and everything else that you can place entries on. And I love how expansive it is. Even just looking at the NBA, there's entries you can make with turnovers, with points. You can do combo deals, dunks, field goals attempted, all of these different things. So there's just so many different ways to make money off of these entries. Be sure to download the app today and use code BTJ for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, download the app today and use code BTJ for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, it's sponsored by PrizePicks. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy.
And I don't think it's any coincidence that it lines up almost perfectly with what's still available there in that safety market, right? So if the Colts were to, do a little bit of looking. I'm not saying this is going to be like a thing that's going to happen very soon. It's not an imminent thing. I don't think that's going to happen. And the Colts are going to take their time. I don't think it's going to be like Justin Simmons gets signed tomorrow, right? I don't think that's going to be the case. I think Indy's going to take their time with this. But I do think it's interesting how it's kind of aligning in a way that would actually be pretty perfect with what the Colts want to do if they chose to sign one of these guys, right? And then really you feel pretty good about this defense, right? A unit on defense that still has some question marks, specifically in that secondary. And so I do think it potentially could be a really good fit for Indianapolis if they so chose to kind of bring some stability back there. And so I kind of noticed that with some of Ballard's comments. And again, it could be nothing. Maybe I'm just overthinking it, but I don't know if I am. I don't know if I am. I think the vibe around it is eventually Indy will sign some sort of veteran DB, if not two, maybe one at safety and one at corner. But I think it's fairly obvious where the biggest need for the Colts right now is. It's just a consistent and veteran presence there at that free safety position. And I think if Indy was able to go and sign one of these guys, and again, they have the money to do so. Remember, when they extended DeForest Buckner, they opened up a good chunk of cap space. So it's not something where the Colts could use the excuse and say we don't have the cap, because they definitely do have the cap and the ability, if they so choose, to add a veteran safety like a Simmons and a Diggs. And you got to think, with how long they've been on the market now, so many weeks after the draft, you got to think that price isn't going to be astronomical, right? And especially for a player like Justin Simmons, who's, coming off an all-pro type of season, I think that would be a perfect fit with what Indy wants to do in their secondary. So they have the cap space. They have the need. Ballard has not committed to this free safety position with the guys that are currently in there, like he seemingly has at corner. So I think there is a legitimate reason to believe that the Colts could and will sign a veteran safety in there to be your starter for the immediate, right? Now, for your future, probably not. 1 or 2 years, maybe longer, depending how some of these safeties look. I know there's some safeties that play well into their 30s, so that could be a reality. But in the immediate, the Indianapolis Colts, is very obvious. They need a steady player in there, right? If they deem right now that the current two guys can't provide that in the immediate, I don't see any harm in the Colts going and getting one of these good, solid, veteran free safety options if they so chose. So that's kind of where I am, guys, with this. I was just kind of thinking, am I just crazy? Like, am I crazy with thinking that the Colts and kind of what Chris Ballard has and hasn't said, it could potentially kind of line up in that way for Indianapolis where they get a really good player here? Because we've seen the Colts do this, right? We've seen them take it into May, even June, July, when they sign a veteran guy. We've seen them do that. So could that be on the horizon for the Colts? We'll see. Only time will tell. Could be completely wrong on this. But, guys, I don't know. Just kind of these things that kind of started to align in my mind a little bit. It would make a ton of sense for the Colts to do this and make a type of move here where they would add a veteran in that safety room to pair alongside Julian Blackmon, at least for 2024. So, guys, curious what your thoughts are here on the Indianapolis Colts. Do you think this is a likely scenario for them? Like, would you like to see them go out and sign a veteran safety? Let me know all those things in the comments down below. Let me know, do you think I'm on track here? Do you think I'm going crazy? Let me know. Wouldn't be surprised at either one. But let me know, guys. Curious your thoughts. Thank you so much for tuning in. Really do appreciate it. That'll do it for this one, guys. Thanks so much. And as always, go Colts.